Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. My name is Betsy Cooper, and I'm the director of the Aspen Tech Policy Hub, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you here today. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to learn about our programs. So we're going to begin with a quick overview of exactly who we are and what we do, and then we're excited to feature a couple of our former fellows and leaders who will share a little bit about their experiences, and then we'll take the vast majority of the time for your questions. So please use the Q&A box to type any questions that you develop throughout the presentation, and we will very happily answer those questions at the end. So first, who are we? We are a West Coast policy incubator training a new generation of tech policy entrepreneurs. So first, we take tech experts like you. We teach you the policy process through two different programs, a paid in residence fellowship program and an unpaid executive leadership program. Third, we encourage you to develop outside the box solutions to society's problems. And then finally, we help you pitch your ideas to actual real decision makers, often they're not limited to government, to have outsized impact on what you're doing. So we're modeled after tech incubators like Y Combinator, but our goal is to train new policy thinkers and to focus the impact of your ideas. So eventually we're building this alumni base. We now have over 100 alums in our program that we hope will understand the importance of mixing technology and policy and will continue to contribute to our research and strategy agenda going forward. So if you join one of our programs, I'm going to start by sort of talking about the hub programs together, and then in a minute, I'll break down the two different programs we're recruiting for right now. But so first, what we give you generally. We give you classes exploring what policy is. So that could be classes about problems, alternatives, and outputs. It can be thinking about cybersecurity 101 or tech policy 101. We have classes that focus on different aspects of government service, whether it be how to get a job in government or how to engage and tell your story once you're in government. So we provide a framework, a boot camp for how to engage with the policy process. Second, if you come into one of our programs, we try to have you learn by practice. So you'll do lots of practical exercises, whether that's writing a policy memo or doing a project of some kind. And so we want to make sure that you don't just listen, you learn by doing. And most of the time you will actually be doing your projects for real world stakeholders so that you get the opportunity to actually engage real life policymakers with your ideas. Next, we have pitch meetings for sharing ideas in progress. So once you're working on a project, we make sure that you engage with the other members of your cohort, share ideas, learn from each other, and try to improve as you go along. Our programs also all include partnerships with policy mentors, folks that can provide you with guidance and make sure that you're heading on the right track, and also give you the opportunity to engage with those who have been there before. And our programs also provide practical resources, whether that be designers, legal experts, communications experts, folks that can help you do the best possible work in this space. In exchange, if you join one of our programs, we do have expectations. We ask that you commit to us like a student for the length of the program. Many employers allow people to take time off to do our programs, and also at least one of our programs is part-time, so you can still work while doing it. But whichever type of program you're engaged with, we expect you to be really committed and do all the work just as if you were a student in school. We also encourage you to actually build something. We want you to create a practical policy output. For instance, mock legislation or regulations, a toolkit for policymakers, white papers, op-eds, a prototype for an app. We want you to build something that can actually have impact. And we ask that you participate in at least one public event. These days, they're all, of course, on Zoom, in which we reveal the results of the program. So we want you to get your ideas out into the public domain. Okay, so I've talked generally about the type of thing that we do, but we actually offer two specific programs. And let me just say up front, we don't know which programs and when we're going to be offering this year. In an ideal world, we'd hope to offer a Hub Fellowship cohort in June. As the vaccine rollout continues rather slowly, we're still uncertain whether we can do that. We also have an executive leadership program that is part-time and online, and that's a lot easier to do in COVID. We don't have a final decision as to what we'll be doing this year, and so we're basically opening up to recruit for both programs. We want anyone who's interested in at least one program to apply, and then we'll do the matchmaking once we have a better sense later in the spring as to what we can feasibly offer. Okay, so our two programs. So first, there's the Hub Fellowship. So the Hub Fellowship is the program that we've been running since the beginning, since we started. It's a 10-week and a couple days program. It is paid. We pay you $18,000 to join the Hub program. We generally admit only about 15 people into each Hub cohort as a result of that. The Hub Fellowship is focused on policy broadly. That does include engaging with government, but it's not limited to that. So if you're interested in changing internal company policy on content moderation or engaging foundations and other non-governmental stakeholders on how better to engage in this space, that to us is about impacting policy, and we want you to, consider being a part of this program. The Hub Fellowship is open to all technology experts. There's no specific age or experience requirement, but we are looking for people who already have significant we don't want policy expertise. We want significant technology expertise. So we're looking for you to be an expert in some way, shape, or form. And once you come into the program, you do a 4-week class-based boot camp, but then you come up with a policy project at the end. So you define that problem that you want to work on, you work in conjunction with other fellows, and you make it happen. And so that means that you have a lot of autonomy in the way that you develop something that you can release with us. Our second program is the Tech Executive Leadership Initiative. It is also 10 weeks, but it's part-time, it's unpaid, and at the moment, at least, it's fully online. We host an orientation that we ideally would like to have in person, but in general, the program can be done entirely remote. It is focused on engaging with the federal government, at least in its current form. So this is for people who either are interested going into government service or are interested in learning specifically how better to engage with the federal government and understanding how it works. It's also a program for tech executives. So we could get into a long conversation about how you define a tech executive, but these are generally more senior folks with managerial experience. A good guideline is that you have at least 10 years of professional experience and quite a bit of that with managerial experience. And then finally, because it's more focused on government, this program is focused on projects in service of government clients. So it won't be an open-ended, you select your own project. We'll have a handful of projects with government clients, and you'll get to prioritize one of those. So I'm guessing that you're like, well, which one do I apply for? And the answer can be one or both. It's totally up to you. And your application for one has no effect on the other. It's literally just a checkbox to indicate interest. But here are some guidelines to help you choose between. If you're interested in the federal government, then the Executive Leadership Program is more tailored to that. The fellowship is better for tech policy generally. If you have a great project idea, the fellowship is better. If you're interested in working more with clients, executive leadership. If you are more interested in being in person and getting paid to do full-time work, the fellowship is for you. If you're somebody who already has a job and can't take the time out, executive leadership is better. And then the main other difference is the eligibility. So the executive leadership program is focused on senior technology executives and folks who have legal status to work for the US government. That generally means a citizen or permanent resident. Whereas the fellowship is more widely open and both to people who may not already have permanent residence and to folks who are technology experts, but maybe more junior in their career. Okay, a couple more things, and then I'm excited to turn it over to some of our alums to tell you what it's really like. But first, who's eligible? So we want anyone to apply who has an interest in technology policy. Founder or company staffer, venture capitalist, think tanker, faculty, student, product manager, project manager. If you are engaged in tech policy, you're all welcome. If you are an executive, you're especially welcome to apply for the Tech Executive Program. You do not need policy experience. In fact, if you have a lot of policy experience, this program is probably not for you. These are introductory programs, and they're meant for people who are looking to learn from the ground up. In general, we're looking for people who don't have policy experience or government experience to come into the program. What you do need is professional experience in technology. So students would have to make a really strong case that they're eligible. And for our executive program, you usually need 10 plus years experience or to otherwise demonstrate that you are an executive. And often to qualify as an executive with specific managerial experience, you'll often, though not always, have more experience. As mentioned, you do need to be at a minimum 21, you need to be fully fluent in English, and you need to already have work authorization in the United States. I'm sorry, but at the current time, we cannot sponsor visas for our programs. So who's interesting to us? We have 4 priority areas. Cybersecurity, the effects of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, protecting democracy through combating misinformation and election security, and then using technology to help at-risk populations. We are strongly considering before the end of this cycle adding a 5th priority area, which is focused on technology and climate. So stay tuned for more information on that. But even if you don't fit into any of these priority areas, we're just generally interested in good ideas at the intersection of technology and policy. So even if you don't fit in right now with the existing formula, we hope you'll nevertheless still consider applying. How do you apply? So apply on our website by the end of the day. Please do not apply last minute, even though we always get a ton of applications at the last minute. On February 22nd, you can link to the application through our website, aspentechpolicyhub.org. A couple tips, writing matters. So please take your time with the application, make sure that you actually proof it, take the time to put in a strong application. This is especially true when it comes to the policy memo. We want to see your creativity, your writing ability, your ability to argue. It's really important to us to hear you express yourself. And we give you some links in the frequently asked questions section of our website where you can learn more about how to do strong writing for purposes of this type of application. We will review the applications over the course of the next couple months. We'll notify finalists late March, early April, and we'll make sure to provide selection information in April with the obvious caveat that if we still don't know what program we're running, we may nevertheless leave ourselves some wiggle room for that. Thank you, COVID, for making this so much more complicated. So finally, how can you help? Apply to the program, refer us strong candidates, send us great problems you want solved, join our network of problem solvers, and help us grow the ecosystem. So whether or not this program is for you, we hope you'll nevertheless become a part of the Hub community. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to the real exciting folks in our ecosystem. These are our fellows who we are very excited to share with you their experiences. So first, I'm going to introduce Mariah Lichtenstern. She is the founding partner of Diversity Ventures. She's also managing director of the Founder Institute Sacramento chapter. Mariah came to us with an amazing venture capital experience, and she demonstrated through her Hub projects she's really passionate about solving the wealth, wage, and funding gaps by building equitable bridges between those with privilege and those with valued but underutilized perspectives. So over to Mariah to tell us a few minutes about her experience. She was a part of the Hub Fellowship Program. So over to you, Mariah.
Hi, Betsy. Thanks for having me on. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions that those tuning in might have. Just listening to the presentation, I'm reinvigorated again and just reminded of, what an incredible experience going through the Hub has been. And there's just so many levels. So as you've mentioned, Betsy, I'm kind of more on that social justice, equitable access aspect, being in the technology sector and just seeing the disparities and misconceptions that have existed there. And this has really just given me an opportunity to not only learn from incredible peers, but to be incredibly empowered, even above and beyond just the technology application, just in my day-to-day life. And Betsy knows this personally. There's been so many policy issues, during the pandemic that I've been able to use the skills garnered to address. And so it's been very empowering. And with my own project, it's just opened up so many opportunities to continue to advocate for equity and closing the wealth, wage, and funding gaps through this project. It's been an incredible springboard. So that's just a little bit of my experience. And I think one of the most rewarding experiences is the network that this has opened up, which is really one of the reasons that I chose to apply, because I knew I would have access to this incredible cohort if I was accepted. And I mean, the relationships forged there, they're lifelong. And little did I know that we would be opened up to meeting even like presidential innovation fellows and coding it forward fellows coming out of, universities and going into civics and government. And so it's just been an incredible opportunity to build a network as well. So I'm happy to be here and answer any questions that may arise.
Awesome. Thank you, Mariah. And if Meha, if you wouldn't mind bringing me back up, thank you. So next, I'm going to turn to an alum of our program, the Tech Executive Leadership Program. And this is Rogers Weed. He's a clean tech executive and angel investor. He was the Director of Commerce for the state of Washington and also worked at Microsoft Corporation for 16 years. Rogers was a part of our very first Tech Executive Leadership cohort. And so I'm excited for him to share a little bit about his experience.
Great, thanks a lot, Betsy. So you can undoubtedly see that I'm a little bit further along in my career. Most of my career has been in the private sector in technology. I worked for Microsoft for a whole bunch of years in product management all over the company and later senior management. And then for the last 6 or 8 years, I've been in clean tech, working for an energy storage startup and now for a wind technology provider to the wind operations and maintenance industry. And in between that, I actually worked for the state of Washington for 4 years in the Department of Commerce there. So I had some public sector experience, but at the state level. And I have been thinking for a while that if there was a chance to work for the federal government and help my country move forward, I would be really interested in doing that. So when I was approached in the summer about the possibility of being part of the first Tech Executive Leadership Institute, it just fit very well with what I'm interested in doing in the future. And I thought a great chance to sort of brush up some of my skills. I've been hearing about human-centered design for years in my day jobs, but had not actually put my hands on it and done it myself. And then even in the policymaking area, the way that gets done at the state government level is different than the federal government. So it was great to sort of get the chance to work on writing memos in a federal government context and thinking about federal government problems. And then I totally agree with Mariah, the networking opportunity. I mean, I kind of come as a product management type of person, but I got put in cross-functional teams 2 different times during the program, actually, with CTOs, CIOs, people with tech backgrounds like mine, but in different roles than I was in. And so, the chance to work with some really dynamic people with slightly different perspectives, even though we share the tech background and the public policy interest was really great. So, I learned a lot, and they did a very nice job, I think, of tailoring it to my schedule so that I could continue doing my job, but also spend a pretty significant amount of time over 10 weeks, learning, getting to know people in this community and thinking about some interesting problems and brushing up my skills with the possibility that I will go to work in the federal government sometime in the next year or 2. So I think that's maybe where I'll stop and look forward, to any questions from my perspective.
Amazing. And thank you so much to both of you for taking the time to be here. So we're going to bring up Mariah and Rogers and really encourage you to ask questions to all of us. Please use the question and answer box at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on your Zoom structure. And we'll get to all the questions before the end of the session. So the first few questions are all logistical, so I'll just take them quickly. So is the pay a flat salary for everyone or negotiated? It is a flat salary. For the fellowship, it is $18,000 for the 10 weeks. For the Tech Executive Program, it is an unpaid program. You don't pay us and we don't pay you. We are asked next about the fellows and how many fellows are admitted to the Hub Fellowship and the acceptance rate. In the past, each of our cohorts has been 15. We're considering upping that to 20 because we haven't been able to host a cohort for a year. but so it'll be in that range, and the acceptance rate is less than 5%. We like to joke we're more selective than many of the top universities, so it's an exciting thing to get in to our programs, and so we do appreciate that. To clarify, for someone writes, to clarify for the Hub Fellowship, we may be applying to a program that is not guaranteed to happen. When will this decision be made? So it will happen eventually. I just don't know when. So in fact, we had a recruitment cycle last time where we accepted a cohort of Hub Fellows, and we actually have a handful of them that are still holding over wanting to do the program after more than a year. So if we accept you into the program, we will offer you a slot at the next possible opportunity to host the program, but I just don't know when that is. I hope it'll be in the summer. I think honestly, it's more likely it'll be in the fall. If it's not then it could be in January. We will eventually host a cohort. We have already made commitments and contracts to people to host a cohort. I just can't guarantee when we can do an in-person program safely, and we're not willing to do the program until we can do so. We've looked at some creative solutions, for instance, getting a tent where we could actually host the program outdoors, with the electricity up here in the North Bay during the summer. We're still considering some of those options, but frankly, we're looking for a certain percentage to have vaccination opportunities to make that viable. And right now, it just seems like things are rolling out slower than we can. But so you're not wasting your application if you put in the application. I just can't tell you the precise date, and we won't make a decision until later in the spring when we see what the vaccination rates are like and what the current caseload rates are like here in the Bay Area. The next question is about the fellowship. Do we have to commit to the project we describe? Mariah, would you like to describe a little bit about the project and how it works?
Okay, so that I guess that will kind of go into the question that's kind of specific to me too as well. So I'm in Sacramento, which is the capital of California, and I see some of the policy things that go on, but I was, just really, I didn't have much of an understanding of how things worked. And in the hub in the first 4 weeks, it's like taking in policy through a fire hose. So when I applied, my knowledge was like this. And I knew that there was a policy problem that I was interested in solving, but I didn't know if I would work on that problem in the hub because we're exposed to all these different ideas from our peers. And I mean, if I could have worked on every single one of them, I would, because they were just so impactful and brilliant. I mean, you can see them on the website. So I knew that there was something that I wanted to address that was around, the funding gap and some, idea of I had an idea of what I thought the problem was. But coming through the hub, you learn the policy process and how to prioritize solutions and evaluate them. And there's just so much that you learn that certainly what I thought that I could do coming in and what I ended up doing were different. And I think it much more informed. I know it was much more informed. And it went from, thinking maybe I would propose something to, someone on the state level to a federal stakeholder. And that's just, one example of a change. So, I did end up working in the realm of what I applied with. And I really didn't know until the last minute that I was going to take that on. And that was partially after, just being exposed to everyone else and making a determination on where could I have the most impact and, would I be able to, continue working on the project after the hub ended while maintaining my day-to-day life. And so there's a whole series of tools that we were given to help us make those decisions. So mine was related, but it definitely changed based on the learning.
And I'd say of the 30 fellows we've hosted so far, 0 have done the exact thing that they pitched in their application. I'd say about half end up doing something in the realm of the topic area that they proposed, and the other half end up getting inspired by something that they encounter in the program and just decide that they want to pursue that. So do we know how many people we're aiming to accept for either of the programs? For the fellowship, again, 15 to 20. For the tech executive leadership program, we actually have 49 in the program right now, and it's working really well. So we don't have a specific target yet for that because we're just in the first week and we really want to see, can we provide the type of support? But that is definitely a bigger program. In Rogers's cohort, there were about 25, 27, I think. So that's gives you a rough guideline. But the larger cohorts work when we have more staff, and we do have more staff support this time around. So the next question was around government and policy experience, and what kind of experience can you have and still be eligible? So let me clarify that. So first, for the Hub Fellowship, we're really looking for people who don't have a fulsome understanding of tech policy. So if you already work in a policy shop in a company, if you have spent a long time on Capitol Hill or in the federal government, if you already have a master's in public policy and a little bit of internship or work experience, then our program is probably it's too elementary for you. So you could have government experience that's not related to policy. So if you, for instance, we've accepted a number of people from the US Digital Service, which is a program where you're sort of more of an operational person in the Hub Fellowship. We've accepted people who work as tech, like sort of more tech style folks working in IT in a government that haven't dealt with policy. But for the Hub Fellowship, it's more about, do you have policy experience? For the Tech Executive Leadership Program, it's more, do you have federal government experience? So Rogers had state government experience, but didn't really know as much about the federal government. Many of our folks are executives in industry who may have worked adjacent to governments, but haven't actually dealt with governments before. And we actually provide tracks in that program, a policy track for folks who really don't know anything about policy, and then a tech track for folks that might already know some stuff about policy, but haven't necessarily dealt with the technology side of it in their day jobs. So for the Tech Executive Program, you can definitely have some government experience, but probably not have worked directly in or for the federal government. The next question is also logistical. Do you admit international applicants to the Hub Fellowship? There is a specific frequently asked question. We admit international applicants who are already in the United States or have a visa that allow them to come here and have work authorization that allow them to do the program. So some commonly asked questions: B1, B2 visas, you are not eligible for our program because we pay you and you cannot accept funds on a B1, B2. H1Bs, very limited circumstances, and your employer would essentially have to support your doing the program. You cannot take a leave of absence and do our program on H1B. I believe J1s can do the program. And then we have some other answers for different visa categories on our website. If I haven't covered your visa category and you want to chat about it, please give us a note. References, what kind of references, what kind of work samples? References, really people who can speak to why you'd be good to do this program, who show you, we talk a lot about your passion for doing policy, your writing ability, your ability to communicate strongly, references that speak to the things that we're looking for in the application. Those would be great to submit. And what kind of work samples would be appropriate? Really, again, strong policy style writing, or your ability to do design, your ability to build stuff. Like, we're looking to see, do you have the skills to go into government or to work into policy? And so submitting some of those. Mariah, did you submit any extra materials? I don't recall.
I might have like put some websites or something. It's been so long, I have to dig it up.
Yeah, exactly. And Rogers sort of went through a different process for the first pilot of Tele. We recruited him, so that's one of the reasons why I'm not throwing questions about that. This is the first open application for the Tech Executive Program. Is there an advantage to the applicants applying early since everyone gets notified at the same time? Nope. We don't look at a single application until after the deadline closes, so there's no advantage, but do not submit at 11:59. We always have people who fail to hit the submit button in time, so please submit by 11:50, even though you have up until 11:59 to save yourself the challenges. We are based in the West Coast. We're asked about what do we mean by a West Coast indicator. We specify the coast because our program up until very recently was in person on the West Coast. And we also are not really, you can see I'm not wearing a suit here. We sort of adopt a lot of West Coast culture in our programs. So, you're not going to be asked to wear a suit. We're going to have more casual ways of approaching things. The formality is lower. So maybe those are some of the differences, although perhaps that's a little anachronistic now that we have programs that you can join from anywhere in the country. Okay, I knew I would get this question and I meant to address it up front. Would you consider making the fellowship virtual? So because the fellowship is paid, to date, we have not offered a virtual version of the fellowship. Frankly, as Mariah spoke to so well, part of the goal is for you to meet people, engage with them, and learn from each other, and you just can't do that as well virtually. And so we are, we are nevertheless contemplating for the future a hybrid, which would be sort of a hybrid of tele and the fellowship. So a part-time, unpaid, policy-oriented version of the fellowship, meaning you could do any project you want. We would teach the portions of the Hub fellowship curriculum, but we wouldn't pay you for a part-time program. Frankly, it's really hard to raise the money to pay folks so that they can take a full-time leave of absence from their jobs. We want to continue to support people in that way, but there's no way for us to still do that in a part-time online-only program. We are deeply unlikely to offer that program in 2021. Like I mentioned, we've already got people contracted for Hub Fellowship, so we want to bring people in for that. And we'd like to, continue to support people going into federal government service while there are a lot of open jobs for that. So I do think that in 2022, stay tuned. I think we are likely to try to, introduce a new program that would be sort of like a hybrid. But if you're interested in learning this stuff now, the two open programs are the best way to engage. The next question is for, let's do this. So can you share what your final projects were all about? So Rogers, why don't I go to you first? Why don't you talk a little bit about the project that you worked on? And then Mariah, maybe you can just give a little bit more detail. And let me just add, we posted the website in the chat. You can look at Mariah's final project. It's about halfway down the page. We're actually going to be releasing the tele final projects from this cohort in the next couple of weeks. There are sort of draft versions already online, but the final versions are actually going into design today. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll actually be putting out the final versions of those, as well as making all the slides and things available. So if you're interested in that, those will definitely be posted before the deadline passes for this cohort. But so first, Rogers, over to you.
Yeah, so there were actually 2 team projects in our 10-week program. There was one that we worked on for a longer period of time, and then there was a last weekend of the program, 48-hour exercise that we were in a separate team for. So, the longer project for our team was really had to do with naturalization of people into U.S. citizenship, and the fact that there's a big backlog of legal permanent residents that have a green card. And why aren't those people getting naturalized and becoming U.S. citizens? And what could we do? What could we recommend or do to help the federal government increase the rate of naturalization among eligible green card holders? So that was a super interesting project. Unfortunately, of course, COVID made it harder than we would like to be able to interact with the Customs and Border Patrol, the agency that's responsible for all this. But I did actually get to go down to Seattle, to the Seattle office, and had a meeting with one of the women that manages that office. So that was a super interesting project. And then the 48-hour program for us actually had to do, Mariah, about Sacramento County and census data collection and how to adjust for undercounting that almost certainly happened in the census because of all of the crazy things that happened in 2020 to impact the census. So that was also super interesting and much more of an abbreviated, focused exercise. But those were the 2 problems that I worked on during the 10-week program.
And I'll just add on that front that the 48-hour exercise is something that we'll be continuing with the Hub Fellowship, but we actually have eliminated it for the next version of Tele, because with the part-time program, it's just too difficult to have people doing 2 projects. So the current structure of Tele, similar to the Hub Fellowship, there's a 4-week period in which it's just about teaching, and there's a short policy memo that you write at the end. And then there will be a 6-week project period. So it's a little bit of a different structure than what Rogers experienced, but largely we changed that based on feedback from the first cohort of Tele, that would enable people to focus on one project, but also to get some training without having to think about their projects right away. And so we were grateful for that feedback. Mariah, why don't you talk about your project? You've been getting a lot of traction with it lately.
Well, thank you. That 48-hour testimony, I did read about that. It just brought back memories. And if I could just really quickly, I think the 48-hour project that we did in the full-time fellowship was one of my favorite experiences, because we actually came together and took what we knew about the project and broke into groups of our respective competencies and created a whole repository of resources that we then took to our individual groups. And it just gave us a wonderful opportunity to see the diversity of skill sets even within the cohort of technologists. And it was just really rewarding and a great way to build camaraderie as well. So my project is around the policy problem. How might we close the funding gap for underrepresented founders of color, tech startup founders of not only of color, women and people of color, underrepresented people of color. So my particular solutions came down to a regulatory issue, which is not considered lobbying if it's executive or regulatory and not legislative. It's within the realm of what we can cover and advocate for within the hub. So mine is focused on the Securities and Exchange Commission and how the accredited investor rule impacts how founders can fundraise at their early friends and family stage. And then there's a separate side that deals more with private policy or private sector policy within the venture capital industry. So the way that funding decisions are made and the biases that exist amongst venture capitalists, the limited partners that invest in them, and other ecosystem builders that affect how startups are funded and evaluated and even given or allowed access to capital formation. So for my outputs, there's a website, there's a policy brief, we all do executive summaries. The policy brief focuses more on the government side, and there's also a longer comment that's accompanying a petition to go to the SEC. So we've been, advocating for that. I did an op-ed that was recently published in Fortune magazine that has a call to action to the petition that we'll be submitting to the the newly appointed SEC chairman when that happens with the new administration. And then on the private side, we have an opportunity pledge, which includes a framework. And since the hub, I've actually developed an online assessment that operationalizes that framework and provides like an ongoing support system for signatories. And we partnered with M-Train, which is a technology platform founded by a female founder and an attorney, and two tech companies within Silicon Valley. And they have a platform that gathers data and benchmarks, and they have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So it really complements our framework. And one of the things I really wanted to get out of the program, especially after the boot camp, was learning how to advocate and learning how to build coalitions. And so that's something that I've really enjoyed as a takeaway from just everything that started with the project within the hub.
Awesome. Thanks, Mariah. And so the next question is, first, I just want to acknowledge a comment that someone else has the same poster as mine, and I bought that at a flea market, so now I'm kind of sad that it's mass produced, although I should have known. However, I bet at least 3 of you have the IKEA poster behind me, so we'll go on. But that was my favorite chat comment, so thank you. Is there a requirement of being vaccinated before being allowed to attend the program? I don't believe we'll be requiring that, but we are looking for a certain percentage of the population to have been vaccinated, and we're looking for caseloads to drop. We're working closely with the Aspen Institute on all state and local rules to figure out exactly where the lines will be drawn there. But at a minimum, at this point where caseloads are so high now, the state and local rules here don't even allow us to gather with more than 3 households. So at the moment, the state and local rules do not allow us to do any in-person programming of the type that we would offer at the hub. So, so we're really looking for the caseloads to drop such that those rules are lessened. And then we're also looking internally and within the Aspen Institute for us to feel comfortable bringing together 15 people or 20 people located in different parts of the country. And by the way, that's exactly why I can't commit to a specific number either. Last time up here in the Bay Area, there was a limit of 12 households could get together. Okay, well, then I can bring 9 people plus our staff or something like that. So, you know, a lot of these decisions will very much depend on how things develop. What have Hub Fellows gone on to do afterwards? This is one of my favorite questions. So 2 of our fellows, Raylene Young and Jessica Cole in the last cohort, actually helped to found the U.S. Digital Response during their fellowship. So this is an amazing organization that's been helping connect state and local governments with tech folks that can help solve tough government problems. And they helped to start this organization with a bunch of other friends of the Hub like Jen Palka and Corey Zarek during their fellowship as the COVID thing started to kick off. So that's one of my favorite examples. We have a fellow, Neil Parekh, that runs the New York City's Artificial Intelligence Lab. We have fellows that have gone on to focus on, they've done some investing within the US government. We also have fellows that go back to their day jobs and take their skills to advocate internally. So we have fellows from places like Google and Facebook that have gone on to join new teams where they engage. We have folks that have gone on to new companies like Pinterest and taking on engineering policy, hybrid roles. So it's a real diversity, and it really depends on what you want to get out of the program. So someone like Mariah goes back to their job, but with a new skill set that they can bring. So that's awesome. And what kind of support do we provide? It's really individualized for the fellows. So we have a jobs Slack channel that I'm constantly posting opportunities in. I constantly am serving as a reference for folks applying to roles. We have a lot of support through the Tech Talent Project, our partners in hosting the Telly program to help folks get into federal government service. In that program, we actually bring in folks that can tell you exactly how to apply for government jobs. We have a session on that in 2 weeks. So really depends on which program you're in and the opportunities you're looking for, but we do try to provide you with tailored support to enable you to take those next steps. And so how do we see engagement with alumni over time? We need to write an alumni engagement plan over the next few weeks. So I hope I'll have better answers for that coming forward. But the whole goal of the hub was really similar to Y Combinator in that, you know, Y Combinator is funding startups, but they're also creating an ecosystem of amazing people who can help each other in the startup world. And we want to be the same type of place for tech policy. So it's been a little hard with Zoom only opportunities, but for instance, we have alum happy hours that we do with a bunch of other tech policy engagements. I try to have at least once a year a follow-up chat with every alum of our programs in order to, you know, give them unique and individualized opportunities. And over time, we hope to scale that so that we can actually host an alumni conference and, you know, provide our Slack channel as the place where you go to engage and get help on these questions. And so we're early days because up until now, we have not really had that quorum of alums. But as we go forward and as our programs scale, we're really excited. Rogers, Mariah, any thoughts on being an alum of the hub? Or, you know, I know it's early days, especially for both of you, but I'd love any thoughts you might have.
I'll just offer that I'm still in touch with people on a regular basis that I was on teams with during the program. So, and you know, the Tech Policy Hub graciously left all the Slack channels in place that they put in place for us to communicate during the program. So, yeah, I mean, we've already just been talking and keeping in touch. So,
awesome.
Same, yeah. So, you know, we keep in touch, and we've done the happy hours, and the Slack engagement is very active, which is a great opportunity to meet the people who came before us and the new cohorts as well. So yeah, like, especially when you're in an intense program like this with people, I mean, those are lifelong bonds, right? So I've been very pleased with that. I've spoken with Betsy after the program, and obviously I'm here now. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we've been introduced to other programs, and then the mentors as well. So we're still in touch with some of the mentors that supported us on our projects. I worked with another fellow on a separate project, and just some of the mentors that came and spoke with all of us. So there's a lot of opportunities to keep in touch, and I'm sure we'll do even more post-pandemic. And I'd love to get together with folks and have reunions and all of that. And I know that will come.
Awesome. And just to note that for a handful of questions, our Deputy Director, Mai Sisla, is answering them in the chat. So please also look at the answered place for some of these as well. We currently have 49 tele participants out of how many applicants? Since this is a pilot, we actually did a recruitment. We work with our partner organization, the Tech Talent Project, as well as folks who had previously applied to our program that fit the category of being a tech executive. And so we did, and that had scored highly in our past recruitments, either had been alternates or had gotten, through several stages of our recruitment process. And so we reached out specifically for a limited recruitment. There was a short application form that folks in that pipeline, in those two pipelines, got to fill out. And that's how we selected the 49 folks. We considered doing an open recruitment if we hadn't gotten to that number, but frankly, for a pilot program, about 50 people was all we felt we could handle. And so we stopped there, knowing that we'd be opening up this recruitment. I don't remember exact numbers, but it was sort of, you were pre-screened to apply. So we had a high number of people that accepted, but it was not a truly open application process as a result. This time I have no idea how many people will apply for tele. Obviously there's a pre-screening in that you have to be an executive to qualify, but nevertheless, based on hub recruitments, it's still a pretty selective process. So what happens after your application? So first, there's a pre-screening. In the past, we've received between 200 and 300 applications. At least 2 people will review every application and score them on a number of metrics, including diversity, passion for doing the program, creativity. We're looking for really creative ideas that make us go, "Ooh, that's a really good idea." Those are the sorts of things that we score people on. And then overall ability to have impact. So we're looking for people that can have real policy or government impact, and we score on all of those things. So that's the pre-screen, and in the past we've selected between 80 and 100 folks. We may do a few more since it's 2 recruitment cycles, and we bring those folks in, and then we send every application in that process out to external review. So if you indicated a strong interest in a priority area, we send it out to specialists. Otherwise, we send it out to generalists. Either way, 3 more people review the applications. We have a total of 5 reviewers at that point. And by the way, there's a tiebreaker at the earlier stage, so it could be 6 people review your applications as well. Then after that point, we take all the scores and we sort of look at a couple other things like diversity, across both ethnic, racial, gender diversity, but also diversity of background, diversity of topics that they're interested in. We mesh that all together and we offer interviews to around 50 people. And then from there, we will narrow down the final selections and make offers to people from there in April. Next question was, what changes are we making for tele from the pilot to the program? This time around, a lot of changes actually. So I mentioned some of them, which was structurally, we now have a 4-week boot camp period. We also have 2 tracks. So what we found last time is that some people would really know a lot about human-centered design and technology and less about policy. Some would know a lot about policy, like we have general counsels in that program that would I know how to write a memo, but I don't know as much about technology. So we now actually track so that people can pick some of the classes that they want to engage, in addition to coming to a general session. So the structure now, we had our orientation, then we have on Tuesday nights an everyone session that everyone attends with teaching. Then we have a 4-week track on policy on Wednesday nights, a 4-week track on technology on Thursday nights. You pick one of those 2. And then after that, you have the 6-week project period, and Thursday nights will become the project night where everybody gets to attend. We also changed a lot of the curriculum based on feedback from the tele leaders on what sort of classes they liked. So, we're doing more on the policy process than we did last time. We're also doing a lot more on like, how do you get jobs in government, more story time. Rogers, you guys loved the story time, as I recall. So those are some of the changes. And in all of our programs, every night now, we ask you to provide us with feedback on the session. And so oftentimes, like, I've been changing what I teach based on feedback I've received. So like, last night, folks said, do you have a diagram on the regulations process? And so in the next policy session, I'm going to bring up a diagram. So we really do try to take in feedback and to, fix it in real time. What are some of the more common ways that people use what they've learned at the Policy Hub Fellowship after they leave? Well, I gave some examples of what people have gone on to do. Mariah, do you have any thoughts on how you've used what you've learned after leaving the fellowship?
Yeah, so that question, it made me think of like, during the boot camp section of the fellowship, we actually learn things and then we apply them, and we apply them individually in as groups. So I'll tell on Betsy a little bit what she did to us to break us into the intensity of the program. I think it was the first gathering we had to announce, our participation in the fellowship. So there was an event, and that day, one of our assignments was to write an email to our representative. And we had to we had to research a policy issue, which we'd already started on, identify something in there that we wanted to propose an adjustment to, and then write this email before we left to the program event. So like, it really trains you to respond quickly. And I have to remind myself that I have that skill now when I need to get stuff out. So that's, those kind of things translate beyond technology. And so, for example, during the pandemic, I've had to write to my representatives, my state representatives. I've had to write to my federal representatives on just like day-to-day personal, things. And it has made such a difference. And I felt so empowered. And it's amazing when people know that you kind of know a little something. You don't have to know a lot, but you just have to know enough to hold them accountable. It's amazing the way that they'll respond. And so this has been a really empowering, it's been a really empowering process, and even little things that are related to my project. Like, so I mentioned the SEC being, one of the stakeholder in my policy side of the project, but even in engaging in that and in advocating for that, there were some little like tech issues with like how my comments, like I couldn't find my comment displayed on the SEC website. They actually created a new form and then displayed my comment, and that didn't exist before in the realm of the website that I had commented on. And so it was like a little thing, but it meant a lot that I could have that influence just through engaging and having the confidence to engage. So those are just a couple of examples that come to mind.
That's amazing. Thanks, Mariah. So a couple answered questions that I just want to call out for the Hub Fellowship. It's like 40 plus hours a week. For tele, you need to be able to dedicate, I'd say, about 10 hours. There's 3 hours of class time. And then, it used to be 8, and Rogers is laughing because he knows that that wasn't enough time, right, Rogers? So could you talk a bit about how much time you spent in tele?
I mean, there's how much time you spend, there's how much time you could spend, and then there's what they suggest that you budget. And I think all of us kind of, and there's a learning curve too, right? It takes time to figure out what expectations are and how to execute on the things you're being asked to do alongside all the rest of your life, because this is a part-time program, right? So, I think that, I think they've adjusted up the hours a little bit, and that's probably appropriate, because if you get involved in something you're interested in, right, you want to put more time into it. But then you're like, if you have a spouse or kids or other stuff that, is going, hey, where did you go for the last, so I think that's, so I think you can spend a lot more time than 10 hours a week, and you're going to be tempted to if you get into a problem that you're really passionate about and you're learning new skills about how to go solve it. So, but I think it's good they adjusted it up a little bit, and I think you can do it in that kind of time if you need to.
Yeah, so we'd say, a minimum of 8 to 10 hours a week. There's 3 hours just of class time. You're going to need time to do your assignments and or work on your project. And then there's readings as well. One change that we've made from Rogers's cohort is that we have a lot less mandatory reading and a lot more, we're only going to use mandatory reading for something we're actually going to talk about in class. And then there's a lot of optional reading. So you could definitely go well beyond the 10 hours if you take the time to do all the optional reading. So that's an adjustment we've made as well to try to moderate the time commitment, but we still want to make sure that you have those opportunities. We also are very family friendly. So my 16-year-old appears regularly on the Zooms. We do encourage you, to come as you are. We understand if you have to step away due to family obligations. We do have a pretty strict attendance policy though. So even if there's other stuff going on, we do want you to participate and to be able to make the full time. So it's sort of a balance. We'd rather you bring your family in or sort of have us on the dinner table than not be able to participate in all the sessions. So we're getting towards the end, so I'm going to run through some answers real quickly. For the policy memo portion of the application, please see our website. We actually have a frequently asked question about that. We do recommend that you focus on something you know about. We want you to take your technology expertise and apply it to a suggestion for a policy outcome. And there's some more advice on the website about how to write that. We also do recommend you look up what is a policy memo. That's part of the goal of that piece of the application. We have another question from Mariah Rogers. Does the Aspen Institute provide access to private data sets that might support a policy that admitted folks would work on? I actually think I can probably answer that better than Mariah Rogers, which is that we don't, there will be projects that might give you, so if you're working in tele for a government agency, and that's, by the way, another big change is that the projects are now tied specifically to a government agency, they might give you access to private data sets. We can also help you find data sets, but as a matter of course, that's not part of what we do at either Tele or the Hub Fellowship. It's not about giving you access to new data. It's about supporting your projects, although that may become a part of it. I certainly have been known to send an email to a government actor saying, please, could you provide access to these wonderful fellows or leaders? What are the criteria for projects during the fellowship? Really, we spend a lot of time on this. Really, we're looking for a good innovative idea. We're looking for it to have the ability to have policy impact, meaning getting powerful stakeholders to change their behavior in meaningful ways. And otherwise, there's a lot of flexibility as to what you build. So you can build a traditional policy memo, you can build a website or an app, you can build an operational plan. We want you to be seeking impact meaningfully. And so we require at least one output that seeks to do that. But there's a lot of flexibility within how to define that. How do we weigh diversity in terms of the composition of the cohort? It's really important to us. I've written a whole article about how we go through this process. So part of the reason our applications are anonymous is to try to achieve diversity. So we're not looking at who you are until after we've read what you want to do. We ask a question specifically about diversity in order to try to encourage that. And we really try to shape that in every aspect of how we approach that, whether it be our speakers, the topics that we engage with, etc. If your idea is similar to a former fellow, does it disqualify you? No. Does the application proposal have to be a piece of technology or a policy idea? Either one. Really, we're looking for you to have impact, so that's important. For the person who wants to look at actual outputs, please see the website, because I think that will give you a much better sense of the types of projects that we've developed. And as I mentioned, we'll be releasing the tele outputs, which are obviously maybe a little bit less robust than the ones from the full-time program, but nevertheless, they've created some really cool stuff. So get excited about that. Will work samples be kept confidential? Yes. And is it possible to get feedback on your last application? Yes, absolutely. Please email us and we will do our best to respond to that. And so with that, that seems to be all the questions that we have, which is perfect because we're just at time. Thank you so much, Rogers, Mariah, for coming and sharing your experiences. It really makes a difference here for people to see what this is like. Thanks to Mai and Meha, our Deputy Director and Program Coordinator, for helping to put on the webinar. And going forward, please apply to the program. Please be in touch if you still have questions. And we really look forward to seeing your anonymous applications when you apply in the weeks to come. And we'll have 2 more webinars. Content will be the same. Q&A will be different. So please reach out to us if you have questions. Thanks so much again for being here. And thanks again to everybody for joining us. Have a great afternoon.